And that is The Unforgettable Side Effects of Heartbreak and Magic by Brenna Randall. Bren? Try that again. Brianne. That's what it is. Hi everybody, my name is Kelsey and we're about to get very, very nerdy with the books that I wish I had read this year. So I have a list here of 10 books that I wish I had read in the year of 2023 for one reason or another. Some of these are just ones that I really wanted to get to. Some of these I bought for a specific reason. Some of these I literally had plans to read, and my reading derailed in the last month and a half of the year. So I didn't quite get to them. I always do a video similar to this in December, so we're just continuing on with the tradition, but there's actually some on here that are legitimately I had plans to read and it just didn't happen. So without further ado, let's just dive in. The first book is one that I had one of those legitimate plans for, and that is the Encyclopedia of Fairies. Sorry, Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies, and this is by Heather Fawcett. This book is one that I have heard so many good things. It came out, I want to say, earlier this year, and I thought this was perfect. It was giving off the fantasy cozy vibes, and I had plans to do a video in November where I read cozy fantasies, and clearly that didn't happen, and this was on that list. However, I did hear Ashley from Frolic Fiction talking about this book and saying it was perfect for winter. I'm actually happy that I ended up not reading it, and maybe we'll get to it in January instead. I heard there's something about our main characters get snowed in this book, and that's why it's got that winter vibe, but it's also super cozy. I'm really in a fantasy mood right now, so I'm excited about this one. But yes, I had a legitimate plan to read this one this year, and it just didn't happen. But that is okay. We will make time next year. But this is exactly what it sounds like. We have our main character, Emily Wilde, who is quite literally going on an adventure, a scouting mission, if you will, and creating this encyclopedia for fairies. And I think she is joined by this guy who she doesn't get along with, I'm thinking. And so it's a little bit of a romance between them. But it is, I'm looking through, and it is actual journal entries. Each chapter has a date and a month on it. So it does take place, I think it starts in October. I'm looking at this now. And ends in, it's not going to tell me, February. So we do have quite a long time that you're doing this, but that's one of the books that we'll just push off to next year, and that'll be fine. Another one is a new release, and that was Iron Flame by Rebecca Yarros. I had plans to read this in November, right as it came out. I was going to buddy read this with my friend Lauren, who's the reason I picked up the first book to begin with. I mean, I'd heard things about it, but it wasn't at the top of my TBR, and she was like, you must read. And I said, okay, fine. And I loved that one, and it ended up on a cliffhanger. I had lots of questions about where the series was going, and I was very excited to pick up the second one when it came out. And then my slump hit. So I decided not to push myself, and we'll get to this one when I'm feeling the pull to read it. Right now that's not happening, so I'm thinking sometime in the new year will be when I can actually give this book the attention and time that it deserves. But this is the sequel to Iron Flame, which everyone and their brother knows about, but it follows our main character Violet, who is basically raised to be, she wants to be part of the Scribd portion of this war college that everyone in this world kind of goes to. There's 4 different quadrants, and she was always going to be a scribe, which is kind of like the librarians, the researchers, people like that. And her mother insists that she be a writer, which is basically a soldier. And so it's her journey into the writer's quadrant. She is considered weak because she does have a chronic illness, and so she is not thought highly of, and is considered that won't last very long. She has an enemy in this camp. There's a guy who's named Zayden Ryerson, and their parents basically killed each other, and so they don't get along too well. But then of course they are forced to work together. There are dragons, It's amazing. This is the sequel. We'll get to this one when the mojo for it comes back. Then we do have a book. It's the only book that I don't actually own, and that is The Goblin of the Glade by Mackenzie Catron. This is a sequel that I actually had the arc of, and it came out in November as well. I was really excited about this. I read the first one and absolutely loved it. It is a companion series. It takes place in the same world, but it's different characters. And so I really enjoyed the first one. It took like my heart and soul when I read it, and I was so excited about this one, and then my slump hit, and so I wasn't able to give this one the time it really deserved. And so I still have plans to read this. Like I'm still very, very excited about it, and I want to give my time to it because the author and the publisher were so kind to give me the e-arc of it, and my life got in the way, you know? So I still have plans to get to this one, but this is one that I really wanted to read. And I don't exactly remember the plot of this one, but it takes place in this kind of location that's called the Glade, and it is a location where a bunch of like mythical magical creatures live, including trolls. And so our first book follows a girl who kind of goes through the woods to get her mother back, and she is wheelchair bound, and so it is an exploration of her going through the woods in a wheelchair. And so this book takes place, this one follows triplets, who are triplet trolls. And I really want to say they are the main guy's siblings. The main guy from the first book, it's his siblings, but I might be wrong about that. But we see our main characters from the first book, and it takes place after the events of the first book. And I don't know like the journey or whatever the plot of this book is, but I'm sure there will be a journey. And I just loved the first one so much, and I can't wait to see what this one looks like. But I just didn't get to it when I needed to. The next one is one that I really wanted to get to, another kind of fall book. I was really hoping to get to this one in the fall sometime. I bought it because I loved this book that I read by this author, another one that I read last year, and that is The Last Flight, and this is by Julie Clark. This is a thriller about two women who are from not the greatest situations, and they meet on a plane and end up switching places. So you've got one person who is escaping, I think, an abusive ex, and then she ends up running into this woman, and they decide to switch their planes, and so she goes where this other woman went, and this other woman takes her plane ticket and goes there instead, and then something happens to the plane and it goes down, and this other woman dies. And so our main character, whose name is Claire, she ends up assuming the identity of this other woman. So there's a lot to it, but it sounded really interesting. I love the other book that I read by this author. I feel like this one actually came out before the other book that I read, but it sounded really, really good, and it's a nice little thriller that I just didn't make time for this year. The next one is silly, okay, because I actually had the audiobook for this book from my library, which is the reason I hadn't read it. I was waiting on the audiobook to come through, but it came through like 3 times from the middle of October to the beginning of December, and I just kept renewing it and then pushing it back because I wanted to read it, but it was during that time when I didn't want to read anything. And that is Love Theoretically by Ali Hazelwood. This is the last book, I want to say, in her kind of like, at least the last book that's currently out in her like STEM romance world that she's created. They're all standalones. They don't have to do with each other. It just has to do with a woman in STEM. And so I read the first 2 books, loved them. The first 2 books that this author has written, loved them, and I just wanted to dive into this one because I'd heard it was really good. I think this one came out this year as well, if I'm thinking about it, and it just sounded, yeah, 2023, so it just sounded really good. Again, love the other books by this author. I just didn't make time for it. So next year is the year that we read this one, and this one follows our main character, Elsie, who's a theoretical physicist, and she is an adjunct professor by day, but by night she is a pretend girlfriend. And she is literally exactly what it sounds like. She's hired by men to play their girlfriends for whatever it is, events, family gatherings, you know, whatever it is that they need. And so her favorite client that she is constantly playing the girlfriend for, she goes to just some gig, I think, for him. I'm not sure what the event was, but she runs into his brother, and then it turns out that his brother is actually someone that she is connected with at work. So there's a lot to this one. It's definitely some fake dating, but not between the main characters, which is interesting. and it's giving me the same vibes as that Christmas book that I read last year, Kiss Her Once for Me, because there's some fake engagement situation in that book that is kind of similar vibe-wise to this one. But I really wanted to read this one, and I just got the audiobook at the wrong time, so we are now back in line waiting for it to come back to me, and I will get to this one whenever I get it again. Next one that I have on this list is Throne of Glass by Sarah J. Maas. I told myself this was going to be the year that I started the series because I want to know, you know, I love Sarah J. Maas. You guys know how much I love the Actor series and the Crescent City series, and I really wanted to get to at least the first few books in this series before the new book in the Crescent City series comes out, because I know that there is a overarching connection, I think, to this world. There have definitely been some comments by people who have read everything that Sarah J. Maas has written that said that there were some like little hints in the second Crescent City book to the Throne of Glass world, and I don't know the Throne of Glass world, and so I have the first 4 books in the series, well, the first 3 and then the prequel, and I just like, I really wanted to make this the year that I read Throne of Glass, that I started that series. I would have loved to have finished it in like the same year as well, but I just haven't had time, and I haven't made the effort yet. So I'm hoping that 2024 is the year that we start this one. Again, there's so many books. I mean, there's 8 books in the series, and I know that you kind of have to get into the first few before the series as a whole kind of like consumes your soul. But I've heard a lot of people say that they like this one more than the ACOTAR series, and I think the ACOTAR series is my favorite by this author at this point. So I'm very interested to see where we're going to go. I've seen people who have read the first one and then read the last one, like videos of them, like when they're starting the series, when they're ending the series, and I just know I'm going to be emotionally destroyed because that's just what this author does to me. But I was hoping that I would have at least started the first book in the series, and that just didn't happen. But I am still very excited about it. Like, the more I think about it, the more this plot sounds interesting to me, and I want to know what this world's about. So here we are. The next one is one that I actually started. I don't remember what month it was in, but I still have my bookmark in it, and I made it 44 pages into and then put down, and that is the 5th and final book of the Percy Jackson series, which is The Last Olympian. I really am mad at myself because I was doing really good about reading a middle grade, like one middle grade every single month, and for a while I was reading the Percy Jackson books back to back because I had read the first one a couple of years ago, really enjoyed it, and I had read like the second one, but like hadn't really continued, and so I was making sure that I continued because I wanted to remember what was happening in the series. And I made it to the very last book and then stopped for some reason. So it just didn't make it into the rotation, but I only have one more book in this series. Well, one more book in the original series and then the new one that he just came out with this year. So this is like a series that I am enjoying because I love Greek mythology and I really like these characters. Especially in the last couple books, I've really gotten attached to some of the world and, you know, some of the characters and what's happening in the world. But like, this is the last book. This is going to wrap up this series pretty much. And then I can move on to some of his other series, which sound interesting because this author has written so many things and they are all mythology inspired, which is very interesting to me. And I'm very excited to continue with other things by this author because I have enjoyed this one so much, but I want to finish this series before I even start anything else. And this is literally the last one. Why did I continue? Who knows? But yes, I wish I had gotten to this one. I'm definitely going to have to start over whenever I do get around to finishing this one and maybe read some synopses from the last couple of books because there's definitely some stuff that I have forgotten. Not a lot, but like I know there's things that happened in the last couple of books that it's not there. So the last book, I'm going to finish it, I swear, at some point, hopefully very soon. The next one is just one that I thought sounded interesting. I have this author's entire collection except for the most recent book that came out, and that was only a couple of months ago. And that is The Flat Share by Beth O'Leary. I love Beth O'Leary's books. I've read she's got 5 out now. So I've read 2 of the 5, and I am hopefully going to get to her most recent one this month. It's on my TBR, but this is her debut. And out of all of the books, like before this year, I hadn't read any of her backlogged books, and out of all of them, this one sounded the most interesting, and I ended up reading a different book by her instead. So I really, really want to get to this one just because like I want to see how she started. And I know this author, like her early stuff is not for everyone, but The No-Show is such a good book, and I will not stop recommending it to people, that I want to see where she started. And this just sounds so interesting. It's from two different people's points of view, and I know that, damn it, it's from two people's points of view. It's exactly what it sounds like. We have our two main characters, Tiffany and Leon, who share an apartment, but they never meet because one person works nights and one person works days. And so I think she works days and he works nights. So anyway, but they are literally sharing a flat. They share the same bed. They share the same apartment, and they communicate via post-it notes to each other, and it's a romance between the two of them. And I know that it's dual perspective, and I know that I've heard people talk about the difference in the perspectives of how she wrote them, and I find that fascinating when an author can do that. When it's two authors writing a book that's dual perspective, it's less fascinating, I guess is the right word to me, because one author could take one voice and one author could take another. But when you have one author who writes multiple voices, I always just find that really interesting. So I really, really wanted to get to this book. It's still the one that I'm the most interested in by her at the moment. So I really want to get to it. But this is an author that I have fallen in love with, and I will honestly read anything she writes at this point. But I still want to get through her backlogged book. Like I said, I only have a couple. I have this one, which is her debut, and then the one that she wrote after this one, which is called The Switch. So her first two books I haven't read, and then her most recent one. But like, this sounds so good. I want to know. The next book is one that is a Book of the Month book that I bought specifically to read in the spooky kind of season. It's a witchy book, and so I thought this would be perfect for like the October-November period. And like I've said many times in this video, that didn't happen, and that is this book, which is The Unfortunate Side Effects of Heartbreak and Magic, and that is by Brianne Randall. This is a debut novel that has been compared to Practical Magic, but like cozier, and I just have heard some really good things by this author. So when I saw the Book of the Month had it, I said must get. It didn't work, unfortunately, but we follow our main character Sadie, who has this curse of 4 heartbreaks that accompanies her magic, and she's always considered that that was a just price for her magic. But then the book really kicks off when her grandmother ends up getting cancer and is dying, and so she ends up kind of taking care of her grandmother, and then her very first heartbreak comes back to town. So there's definitely a second chance romance going on there. And then it does that her brother shows up with some information or some family secrets and stuff's going on. So she's getting all of those 4 heartbreaks, and the synopsis ends with the fact that she faces when she faces the last of her heartbreak, she has to decide, is love more important than magic? So it's definitely a more hard-hitting romance than like a fluffy romance, but like it's like cozy and perfect for like the like Halloween season, especially when I want all those fun witchy vibes. So I meant to read this, and it did not happen. And the last book that's on this list is actually one that I specifically stated in my goals that I wanted to get to, and that didn't happen. I honestly forgot about it for most of the year, and at this point, I've forgotten what the first book's about, so we're going to have to find a synopsis somewhere, because I do want to continue with it, because I remember enjoying the first one so much, and that is These Twisted Bonds by Lexi Ryan. The first book is These Hollow Vows, which I ended up reading last fall, I want to say, and really enjoying it. Had a fun, like, fantasy vibe. It definitely fit in the vein of like when I was reading Once Upon a Broken Heart and all of those types of books that I was kind of getting from subscription boxes and really, really enjoying. And it's only a duology, so I only have to read the sequel. So I have these 2 editions. I do have one. The other edition is like my Fairy Loot edition. So I remember it ending on a cliffhanger and me being surprised by what happened, but I don't remember a lot of the details about it. I do remember it follows our main character, who is stuck between the Seelie and Unseelie courts in this world, and she has to, like, she's been tasked to do one thing. No, hold on, I'm remembering things now. The Unseelie King, I want to say it's the Unseelie King, kidnaps her sister and basically says, I'll give her back if you do some things for me. And so she ends up having to do a few tasks, and she is in the Seelie court. I might be mixing these up, but the other court, and is doing some tasks. So she's got that, and then she's got the prince that she is kind of connected with. And then on the other side of that, there is an Unseelie kind of like rebel who she is also connecting with. And so it's, you know, who does she trust kind of story. I think I'm mixing up a few things in my head, but I purposely had like a bunch of books that I wanted to get to and a bunch of series that I wanted to finish this year, and this is one of them, and it was the duology of the set, and I should have made time for it and I just didn't. So we're going to talk about this book again when we get to my goals, or reacting to my goals for the year, but that's one that I should have made time for and just didn't. And that's it. That is a look at some of the books that I wish I had read this year and just didn't make time for one reason or another. I always love looking at this list like this because I think it's kind of fun just to see, especially this year where I had like specific plans, and just kind of see what I didn't get to, and like maybe bring some things to the forefront of my brain again, so that when we go into next year, maybe I'll read them sooner rather than later. But I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know if you have any books like this that you had wished that you had made time for this year. Or of course, if you've read any of the books that I mentioned in today's video, I would love to know your thoughts on those. But if you like this video, and I very much hope that you did, don't forget to give it a big thumbs up and subscribe down below if you'd like to be part of this awesome growing family. I've also got all my social media down there, as well as other fun bookish links. So don't forget to check all that out, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye!